Okay, then I waited the 2 minutes, and I'm really happy to see that so many people wanted to join this webinar today. I'm speaking from Norway today. The weather is nice here. I'm from my home office, as maybe lots of you are also. I'm going to talk about the cyber threat landscape so far this year. That's the topic of this presentation, and with a special view on what we see related to the COVID-19. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Marie Moe. I'll introduce myself a little bit more. But before we start the webinar, I would like to encourage you all to submit your questions throughout the presentation. I will, at the end, I will go through all your questions and do a short Q&A session if there are any questions. So the way to find the Q&A panel is you look in your bottom menu, and then you should ask your question to all panelists, because then it will show up in my list of questions. So please go ahead, feel free to ask your questions via this chat functionality as we go along, and then I'll come back to it in the end of the presentation. So a little bit about myself, about the speaker. As I said, my name is Marie. I've been with Mnemonic since January this year with the Mnemonic Threat Intelligence team. And I like to say I'm really happy to be on this team. It's a great team. I have a varied background. Been working more than 10 years in cybersecurity infosec. I also have a part-time position where I teach students about incident response. I have a PhD in information security. I've been doing incident handling in my previous jobs as well. Before I joined Mnemonic, I worked 5 years as a research manager and been leading some interesting research projects. And before that, I've been working with the Norwegian government cert, NorCERT. And 2 years I was a SOC team leader at NorCERT. Here are my contact details. Also, if you have some more questions that I can't answer today, please feel free to send me an email. Follow me on Twitter if you want to interact on social media. Also, I have a LinkedIn profile. And some of you might have seen of my previous talks. I've been doing a lot of talks on cybersecurity of medical devices, and particularly my own pacemaker implant. So if you're interested in that topic, there are some talks about that available on YouTube. So over to the topic of today's talk. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we've seen in the cyber threat landscape related to COVID-19. So there are some points that I want to focus on. First of all, it's the change in our everyday, work situation. We're all working from home. Maybe not all of us, but lots of us are working from home, and this leads to some changes into how you can't see all the network threats in the same way as before. You might have differences in visibility into monitoring your network and detecting cybersecurity threats because of this change in work environment and work situations. On top of this, I'm going to also talk about some things that we are seeing related to COVID-19 themed phishing campaigns. So, of course, COVID-19 has become a very hot topic. It's something that everyone's interested to know more about. We're seeking out information, and this makes it perfect, as a lure for getting people to click on things. I'll also get into some statistics and things you are seeing related to number of events, incidents that are going through our SOC, our Security Operations Center at Mnemonic, and I'll come back to that. But we do see a small we see an increase in targeted attacks that I'll come back to. And then I want to end on a positive note, saying a little bit about all the things we are doing as to fight these new COVID-19 cyber threats, and our defenders internationally are joining forces to do something about this problem. So that's the agenda for today. So working from home, as I mentioned, it impacts the threat landscape. I mean, there's a larger attack surface when we're all taking out our devices from the office and logging into our work systems from home remotely. Plus, there might be changes in how IT system administrators are doing the logging, how we're doing the detection, monitoring of cyber threats. And I guess many businesses, when we got this abrupt change in the way people started working, at least for those businesses that were not having a big part of the workforce already working from home, they might had to set up some ad hoc solutions. They might have to scale up some solutions and also do something about, like, for instance, upscaling their VPN solutions. And depending on the architecture, the way we set up this remote login solutions, I mean, some of them can evade bypass monitoring and detection. For instance, if you set up a split tunneling VPN, this is something you should look into. But also there could be an opportunity here. I mean, there could be a way of, when you're changing work habits and when you're looking into how how all your users are logging in, you could see this as an opportunity to get better insight into to your network traffic, into your systems. One thing that we highly recommend is that you have cloud proxy logs, so that when people are surfing from home, they have to go through this proxy. And if you, on top of this, also add endpoint detection for all your users working from home, I mean, you might end up with a better security posture after COVID-19. And you might be able to see even more cyber threats in your networks. One thing that is really crucial right now is to really safeguard all your login credentials and to have a good overview of all your logins. So, I mean, we already have many, like, monitoring solutions have things like impossible travel detection, doing geolocation lookups on the IP addresses where users are logging in from. And these days, I guess it's the impossible travel is a reality. No one is traveling, so this could be a good indicator. But at the same time, it also might be a bit problematic because everyone's using VPN, and maybe they're also using their own VPNs and have set them to somewhere else, like a different country than the country they're actually in. So that could lead to some false positives. But I want to stress that in particular, the AD login credentials should really be protected these days. And one thing of safeguarding these is to, of course, have multi-factor authentication, which is something we highly recommend. And then have a good like review, look at the management of all your internet exposed services. We know there's been a lot of like popular vulnerabilities going around this year. The start of the year, you know, we all remember the Citrix NetScaler, and there's also been some known vulnerabilities in popular VPN solutions, like for instance, PulseSecure had a vulnerability. And if you don't have, I mean, a good way of patching the systems, you will be at risk because the attackers are actively exploiting these known vulnerabilities. Another thing that is worth to look closer into is your remote SSH logins. There are ways that you can restrict these, and this should also, of course, be monitored for suspicious logins. And you might want to be particularly like do a good like a configuration management check and see that there are no opened ports or like SSH logins that were opened at one time, then maybe you forgot to close them afterwards. It's good to do some real good housekeeping these days when it comes to your remote logging solutions. So moving on, more things to think about when it comes from working from home is now we're using much more video conferencing tools like this one. And of course, when everyone starts using the video conferencing tools, these become more popular targets and also become, more scrutinized by the general security researcher community. So, that's maybe why we've seen more vulnerabilities being published in popular video conferencing solutions because they're attractive targets. So check your exposure, check your configuration management. There are ways to set up video conferencing so that it's more secure, so that you have end-to-end encryption, for instance. And I think we have learned some hard lessons on this around different organizations have seen that this is now a new challenge. And also on top of this, you add more bring your own device ad hoc remote solutions that also increases the risk. So look into your patch and configuration management. Does it work when your users are working from outside of the internal network? What happens when everyone, when you ease the restrictions and everyone can come back to the office? Will you see increase in infected devices? When we're working from home, we might also have some there will be some changes in our user security posture. We might be more relaxed. We might be more, likely to click on these links that are coming in. And it is a special situation right now. We're all seeking information. We all, feel it. Feel this uncertainty and fear. And we want to know more about what's happening around the world, of course, in the situation we are in now. That's not only related to COVID-19, it's all the political changes that are taking place and all the things that are happening right now. So be aware that your users might be a bit more vulnerable than usual because of this. So users are more susceptible for COVID-19 phishing, it seems. And of course, cybercrime actors are capitalizing on this. They want to make money, and they exploit our sense of urgency and fear. And this means that the clickbait seems particularly effective. So if you make a very tantalizing headline attachment that says something about COVID-19, if you also disguise this as company internal communication or official communication, government communication, everyone wants to know more, they want to click on this. So we see a lot of the same old phishing campaigns, the same old things that we're already seeing. We see the same old business email compromise, the CEO fraud, the same old ransomware. It's just now latched onto COVID-19, using COVID-19's lures as themes for spreading malware. So there's one example that we picked up in our sensors. And if you get an email saying that there's a concern surrounding coronavirus across our premises as a case has been reported positive, you want to know more. You want to click on this link. So that's a great lure for cyber criminals to use. So one example that we've seen is we have observed lately. Going back many months. A campaign which is like a semi-targeted malspam campaign, where users are lured to click on a file which is an SLK file, which actually pretty good targeted against their users. We see this is not like something that is trying to like catch all. It's very well written and has some like interesting topics and seems targeted towards the recipients. So I would say it's semi-targeted because it's kind of massive campaign. There's a lot of these phishing emails going around. So we have been tracking this for a while, and we've seen it with different topics, different themes. But in May, it latched on to the COVID-19 spread and started to become COVID-19 themed. And also other security companies have reported about this. Here's a tweet from Microsoft Security Intelligence warning about this massive campaign. So what it does is it delivers a legitimate RAT, remote access tool called NetSupport Manager. And once you have NetSupport Manager installed on your system, it's an excellent way for the attacker to then start like carrying out further intrusion to your system, installing different tools, and it's a great starting point for them to do a real intrusion. So what we see is that there are some SLK file attachment when the victim clicks on the link. There will be a pop-up like you can maybe see in this illustration, which asks you to enable remote content, to enable a macro. And this is the way that these threat actors are able to install and download an installer file on your system, which then installs the NetSupport Manager at. And this MSI file that is downloaded is actually unique for its download. It has a bit not perfect AV detection, so that's why this is something to be a bit worried about. But we've seen some reuse in their backend infrastructure, like CNC infrastructure. So we are monitoring this closely and looking for new developments. We have already implemented detection for our customers when it comes to this threat. So this is a great example of how cybercriminals are launching campaigns and then like latching on to COVID-19 themes and being quite successful because people want to know more about the COVID-19. They want to watch this, to be able to interact with this Excel spreadsheet that shows the statistics. And also we see targeted attacks increasing. So I've been looking closely at the statistics from our SOC, and although there are few cases of targeted attacks, we definitely see there's been more in April, May. What's been reported by others, like for instance, there's been warnings from the FBI, from the NCSC, and other security research companies also about targeted attacks, is that of course there is a great motivation for nation state sponsored actors to gather information about the COVID-19 and how we are responding to COVID-19 around the world. And there is obviously a race for developing a cure, developing a vaccine, and this creates an intelligence gathering need. So COVID-19 actually then leads to a change in how threat actors are actively seeking information about COVID-19 from medical supply chain actors, from hospitals, from research institutes, from pharmaceutical companies. And of course, this is now more critical than ever. So that's why there's a need for this information. At the same time, there's also the, let's say, traditional APT actors that we have been all tracking and are watching closely as threat analysts. And we see that they are now carrying out their campaign as usual, but they're now using COVID-19 themed lures. So you could say there's an increase in target attacks, both because there's like a change in the threat landscape, there's a changing in the motivation of the threat actors. But at the same time, we could say it's COVID-19 related because it's now like the same old campaigns using COVID-19 as a lure. I don't know if in my opinion, these are two different things that are making like target attacks maybe more of an issue right now. So one thing that's that the APT threat actors are actually doing, which is kind of a low-hanging fruit, I would say, is such a simple technique, is this password spraying activity, which we have observed and others also have observed. And in US, the CISA, and UK, the NCSC, they have issued warnings about these threat groups actively targeting healthcare entities right now with password spraying. So it means that the attacker just, first does some reconnaissance, finds user accounts that they want to target, and they just simply try the most commonly used password against many accounts. And this, of course, you can have detection to see this, and in many cases, it might also lead to accounts being locked out, which can be also problematic. But the more problematic thing is, of course, if some of your users are using this popular passwords, then there's an entrance point for the targeted attack. So you can do some things to prevent against this. There's a list of the top 100,000 passwords that you can easily download. The link is here in the slide. You can check this against your AD, your user's choice of password. You can of course have very strict policies of how your user is allowed to create a new password and use this list as a kind of blacklist when someone is changing your password. I'm not promoting frequent change of passwords here. In my opinion, password changes should only be done when it's mandated, when you have a suspicion that there might be some user account compromised. So if the threat actor uses password spraying and also combine this with the popular credential stuffing technique, then this is very effective. So credential stuffing basically means that they are the threat actor is using. There's so many large password database breaches that have been leaked, and you can just have a look at Troy Hunt's Have I Been On site and see the massive scale of this. And if your users are reusing passwords, which we know is a big problem, then also credential stuffing will be effective. So what have we seen in the mnemonic SOC? I've been looking into the numbers. I've been trying to see if I see any obvious patterns here. We are seeing about 20 billion events per day, is a huge amount. You can see a small snapshot here from our event statistics. And when I look at it, this is from start of February until now. I can see that there were some effects from the Norwegian lockdown, which happened in the mid of March. You can see there's a dip in the number of events, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. So here's the dip, and this is when the lockdown started in Norway. And then there's an obvious dip here, but that's because of Easter vacation. I know in Norway, almost no one is working over the Easter. So that's why we see that obvious dip, which we see every year. But then it's starting to increase, and we have seen a steady increase throughout the last few months. But we haven't really seen a big impact on the number of incidents that have been handled. The number of incidents is pretty stable. What we have seen, as I already mentioned, is an increase in the targeted attacks. But since this is a very smaller category, I mean, this can be, it doesn't mean to, I mean, I can't interpret that to be a trend. It could be just like single cases that we have observed and been alerted about. But we do see a lot of, I mean, we issue a lot of alerts to our customers. And when I look into the numbers, so far this year, we have created 456 tickets that were in the category of confirmed infected systems. So of course, we are all the time warning about systems that might be infected, that might have been exposed to malware and so on, where there's been like phishing campaigns where we don't know if the users actually clicked or not. So these are, I mean, thousands. But in 456 cases, we were sure that these systems were actually infected, and the customer had to do some things on their end. So there's a lot of activity, but I mean, steadily increasing, but not a big increase in the number of instances, but not a decrease either. So I mean, it might have shifted a bit because we're maybe seeing different things than before, because some customers have less visibility because of the way they set up their monitoring solutions, their logging solutions, while other customers might even have better visibility now after COVID-19 and after remote working from home. So I'm starting to get out of time, but I want to end this on a positive note, saying that we as defenders, we are joining forces. There's a lot of initiatives going out there, and which we are also part of. It's the CTI League, it's the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition, Slack groups, and these act as information hubs. They can use to like triaging new incidents, looking into indicators of compromise, sharing indicator of compromise, doing takedowns, law enforcement escalation. And we are active in intelligence gathering and also information sharing. And these initiatives have created a huge block list based on malicious domains that are have been registered that might be, infrastructure for cyber criminals or other threat actors using COVID-19 as lures. And we also take these different ICs that are shared and use them for threat hunting inside our systems, which has led to discovery of some targeted attacks. We are also looking into our passive DNS database collection, and we have put filters in place that are searching for new COVID-19 related domains. I mean, of course, there's a lot of new COVID-19 domains being created right now for different information purposes and so on. So it's important to not like blindly think that just because it's a new domain created and it's something with COVID-19, it's malicious. But some of these are actually malicious and also being used to used in phishing campaigns and hosting malware. So we've seen, of course, a spike in domains created related to COVID-19. We have seen a downward trend since April, as you can see in the statistics on these new domains. We do report suspicious domains to the National Cybercrime Center in Norway, so that they can, act on this information and also do takedowns if it's needed, if they see some of these domains related to criminal activity. And we already have a webinar series here at Mnemonic. I don't know if this is the first webinar you're watching, but I have other colleagues that have done presentations too. And I want to point you all to a presentation done by my good colleague, André Holvik, and he has also written this white paper, which is available on Mnemonic websites. So what can you do to reduce the risk? This is the question. I won't have time to go through that in this presentation, but I want to refer you to this white paper and to this other webinar that you can watch freely. there are 8 points that we, or 8 steps that we think you should think about when it comes to reducing the risk right now. And please feel free to download this white paper from this link. Okay, thank you. I think I've used my 30 minutes now, and I'm curious to see if there's any questions. Let's have a look at the Q&A session. I can't see any incoming questions. So, okay, here it is one. So yeah, it's more information that during the 2 months of quarantine in Bulgaria, they have seen a massive spam attack in local emails, which contains links to some US online store which have medical products. Yeah, this is also what we have seen. It's like medical products, like for instance, face masks are very popular right now. In the start of the pandemic, many people couldn't find face masks. They were sold out everywhere. Pharmacists didn't have any face masks. And of course, then there's a need for face masks. This is something the cyber criminals will latch onto and use as their lure. And I mean, you should always be a bit careful when you're doing online shopping, but this can be used for, like, I mean, a number of things, but probably it's like a opportunity taken by threat actors. Any other questions or comments? No, it doesn't seem so. So I think we'll close this session now. Yeah, there's one question about will the presentation be available after the meeting? So this meeting is actually recorded, and it will be made available. So if you want to refer anyone to seeing this presentation, just check out our webinar series on our website. Okay, thank you. And thanks to everyone that were listening in to the stream today. And I hope you have a lovely day for the remainder of the day.